So do you know what genetically modified foods are?
Like tomatoes and things they do like to make them last longer when they ship them and stuff.
Or bettered or improved by collecting the best of and keep going. But
I've heard of them. Yeah, I don't know how big of a fan I am, but
Right.
yeah, I don't really know if it's good or bad.
Did you know that we've been eating these foods for the last 10 years?
No, I haven't known that. Where do they normally sell those kind of foods?
I'm kind of taken back by it. I thought it was just grown in soil, and I didn't know they were modifying my food.
I know.
It's kind of scary.
Well, I know it's been a while. I didn't realize quite that long.
Well, the simplest way to put it is that scientists had an idea to make crops more resilient to external factors. So let's say you grow tomatoes, and at night it gets so cold that by morning half your tomatoes are frozen, and now you can't sell them anymore. This is what scientists were able to change through genetic modification. They figured out a way to take DNA from one organism and put it inside a completely different organism to create a desired and specific outcome. For example, let's go back to the tomato scenario. Scientists recognized that Arctic flounder, yes, that's the fish, could withstand extremely cold temperatures. They thought, what if we took the DNA trait that allows the flounder to withstand the cold and put it inside the tomato DNA so that the tomato could withstand the same temperatures? Now you've just narrowed your chances of your tomatoes becoming frozen. This idea that you could now get 100% crop yield was the original guiding principle for genetic modification. Our friends at Lilly Films have a documentary called The Future of Food by Deborah Coons-Garcia that explains it best.
Genetic engineering is really a radical revolution in food production. It's really a cell invasion technology. You know, people have heard they're taking a flounder gene and putting it in tomato so the tomato can last in cold temperatures. But people don't ask, how does that flounder gene get in that tomato? How does it get in there? And what really happens is the only way you can do it is to invade the cell of the tomato and deposit the flounder gene. Well, what's good at invading cells? Bacteria and viruses.
After 12 years of searching, Monsanto found a soil bacteria that is naturally immune to Roundup herbicide. Their goal was to genetically engineer DNA from these bacteria into various plants. They cut out a sequence of DNA that is resistant to Roundup. But if this DNA sequence alone is inserted into a corn plant, it will have no effect. So the next step involves E. coli bacteria. Gaps are created in the E. coli DNA, and when the two test tubes are mixed together, some of the E. coli DNA recombines with the Roundup-resistant bacteria. Then the technicians smuggle the engineered DNA into the cells of the corn plant they want to modify. Cells will naturally reject foreign DNA, so they developed a method using soil bacteria that causes tumors in plants. They use this bacteria to ferry the engineered DNA into the plant's nucleus. There are also two other methods used to get the engineered DNA through the cell wall. One uses a stream of electricity to create tiny holes in the plant cells so they become vulnerable to infiltration by foreign DNA. Another is the gene gun, which blasts particles of gold coated with engineered DNA into the plant cells. Each of these three methods needs a promoter gene that turns on the desired characteristics. The promoter gene is often extracted from the cauliflower mosaic virus.
This capacity of bacteria and viruses to invade mammals in different ways is what really has a lot of people edgy about biotechnology, because that's really what the tools are all about. In order to move genetic material from one organism to another that don't normally cross, you've got to sort of behave like bacteria and viruses and invade into the cells and become established, just like a virus must become established.
American Heritage Medical Dictionary defines genetically modified organisms as an organism whose genetic characteristics have been altered by the insertion of a modified gene or a gene from another organism using the techniques of genetic engineering. The hope was that this biotechnology would end world hunger by creating higher crop yields. Ironically, we have found studies that indicate just the opposite. Reports have shown that genetically modified crops actually produce fewer yields. In fact, in some countries where starvation rates are very high, there have been many cases of citizens burning genetically modified crops in protest. Like the Future of Food said, Monsanto, the largest biotech company in the world, was able to make seeds that resisted their own Roundup herbicide. This allows farmers to spray as much herbicide as they want without worrying about their crops dying. But it doesn't stop there. Scientists can now make seeds that produce their own pesticide. This is like you and me walking around with a mosquito repellent coming out of our pores. How do they do this? Scientists found a bacteria in the soil that is lethal to many species of insects called Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT for short, and they genetically engineered it into the crops. So what could the effects be when the bacteria that only used to live in our soil is now being distributed into the air through our crops? In the Philippines, the people living next to the genetically engineered cornfield developed recurring skin, respiratory, and intestinal problems. Blood tests were done on 39 of the Filipinos, and it was revealed that their immune system was affected by the BT toxin that the corn had released. And there's still more. Instead of just making drugs in labs, scientists have been growing crops that produce their pharmaceutical drugs, like research chemicals, blood proteins, antibodies, and vaccines, just to name a few. According to the Society of Diabetic Rights, thousands of diabetics have experienced bad reactions, and many have died as a result of this genetically engineered insulin called synthetic or human insulin. The Union of Concerned Scientists have been urging the United States Department of Agriculture to put a ban on pharma crops due to the potential that they could contaminate all of our food supply.
For those of you who don't know, Monsanto is a company in the agriculture business, and they are known for patenting different types of seeds. They've done so with cotton seeds, they've done so with corn seeds. So it's something that they have done to kind of take over the food industry, right? And they've been in the middle of a lot of different controversy, but they're also known for genetically modified foods, right? Genetically modified seeds. And a lot of our corn is genetically modified, thanks to Monsanto. Now, scientists in France just recently did a study to see what the effects of genetically modified corn are on rats, right? Now, this is really interesting because there has been a lack of scientific evidence that would indicate whether or not genetically modified foods, like genetically modified corn, are safe and okay for human consumption. So what they found was that these rats developed mammary tumors, and they also had severe damage on some of their organs, including the liver and kidney. Those are pictures indicating what happened to the rats that were fed genetically modified corn.
They do not appear to be okay. It's not the picture of what I would call safe.
So, of course, Monsanto is, completely debating the findings of this study. They're very, very aggressive in fighting anyone that says anything negative about them, right? But there was an excellent documentary done. It was called The World According to Monsanto. And, they talked about the lack of oversight with the FDA when it came to genetically modified seeds. So let's take a look at a part of that documentary that explains it in greater detail.
The reason why GM crops are here is based on a deception that occurred in the FDA. They said that these foods are not different. They use the word substantially equivalent. They use the word not meaningfully or uniformly different. And what that turned into was a terminology called generally recognized as safe, or GRAS. Typically, if something is to be considered generally recognized as safe, it needs lots of peer-reviewed published studies and an overwhelming consensus among the scientific community. With GM crops, they had neither.
So, of course, Monsanto will come back and say, no, we have a bunch of studies, okay? These are studies that indicate that these foods are completely safe. However, if you do a little research into these studies, you'll find that they were in the middle of controversy because a lot of those studies were falsified. Okay.
Wow. Now, and I'm sure that it wasn't scientists that Monsanto was paying to do those studies. No. They wouldn't. And I'm sure those people have no biases whatsoever.
So what happens is they slowly but surely start taking conventional cotton seeds off the market. So these farmers in India become dependent on buying the genetically modified cotton seed. Well, what happens then? Monsanto will mark up the prices to 4 times the price. Okay?
That's the part they didn't tell you in the beginning.
So then these farmers in India have no choice but to take out these loans that later on they can't pay back. So what is the result of that? Well, let's watch the video.
But this is the cotton growing area. The result of the BT cotton is the first year 600 suicides from June 2005 to June 2006. Second year, still today, within 6 months, 680 suicides. So it's a disaster.
It's a complete disaster, yes. All these technologies, either it is GM or biotechnology, they are actually making the farmers completely dependent on the market. Because not only that you have to pay more for the seed procurement, but you have to fertilize. And this very claim that no spraying is required, no pesticide required, is also false.
When Monsanto claims in advertising that GM crops are adapted for small farmers, what do you think it's?
Our experience shows that it is completely false.
So as he mentioned, in 1 year there were 600 farmers who committed suicide because they simply couldn't pay back their loans. They filed for bankruptcy, they lost everything, and they just had nothing else to turn to. And by the way, I just want to be crystal clear that suicides among farmers in India is you know, it happens for other reasons as well because of extreme poverty. But in that documentary, they were specifically focusing on farmers who had to file for bankruptcy because they couldn't pay back those loans.
And they found that the genes that were inserted into soybeans transferred into the DNA of the bacteria living inside us, and certain varieties of genetically modified corn are engineered to produce an insecticide. An insecticide living inside us, an insecticide.
I'm looking at the food that's in the grocery store. They say it's safe, everybody eat more. On second thought, I don't really know if it's made with those GMOs. So I'm looking for the non-GMO label. Before I bring it home, I'll put it on the table. I wanna know if it's verified, so I don't harm myself with genetically modified. They don't want you to know. Poison they grow. Profits that show. From those GMOs. Seeds that they sow. Gonna hurt us, we know. Told them to go. Say GMO, no. Hey, look. I don't wanna eat poison, I don't want gene mutations at my dinner reservations. It's a food abomination, what they're doing to this fast food nation. They take artificial gene combinations, inject them in seed variations, so they can grow their Franken food imitations, while the side effects cause medical patients. Keep the profits alive while they're spraying on the food with name brand herbicides, and all the while they're spreading their lies. Monsanto destroy a farmer's lives, and the FDA just keeps it all going, saying it's safe even though they all know it's just poison, stealing away your life, and that's what you eat, but genetically modified. They don't want you to know. Poison they grow. Profits they show. GMO, no. Seeds that they sow. Gonna hurt us, we know. Told them to go. Say GMO, no.
FDA scientists said that GMOs might create allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. Allergies, toxins, toxins. And they said, no testing necessary. No testing necessary.
GMO safety, that's a corporate myth. If you don't believe me, listen to Jeffrey Smith. He's the man with the plan, gonna do what he can to help us all get those GMOs banned. But we need you to lend a hand, take a stand against this food stand. It's a mission for the health condition worldwide, cause we don't wanna live genetically modified.
No testing necessary. No insecticide. Living inside us. No testing necessary. No insecticide. Living inside us.
Don't eat food unless you know what's in it. Don't believe the propaganda, the press will spin it. Affects everybody, we all up in it. Stand up to Monsanto, tell him, oh no you didn't. Reject Franken foods in the store. Demand honest labels so we can be informed. We have a natural right to know what we buying. Just say no to GMO before our farms start dying. Just say no to GMO. These corporate crooks are lying. Just say no to GMO. This time we're not complying. Just say no to GMO. just not buying it. Just say no to GMO.
No testing necessary. No insecticides.
Just say no to